Not only did Sabalenka's response go viral, but it also became the most replayed moment in tennis history. It was not intended for what transpired courtside that day to be captured on camera. Just a quick look, a muttered remark, and the stadium as a whole held its breath. This was now personal rather than match-related. And the events that followed would split the tennis community in two: Aryna's supporters and detractors. Here's what the cameras failed to capture, though. Here's what actually transpired when two universes collided at the most unexpected time. Melbourne Park, January 2026. Aryna Sabalenka was dominating the Australian Open, which was in full swing. As the reigning champion, she was eager to win this competition for the third time in a row. Even seasoned pros cringed at the astounding speeds of her serves. She used surgical ground strokes. She was making a statement in addition to playing tennis. However, there was someone on the other side of the internet that the world was only now starting to take attention of. The 21-year-old Filipino Alex Eala was facing one of the most formidable opponents in women's tennis on Rod Laver Arena after battling her way through qualifying and eliminating two-seeded players. This was more than just a match for Eala. She had been striving for this moment since she was a young child hitting balls on dilapidated courts in Manila. That day, Eala had other plans. Another person, Mateo Ramirez, a budding Filipino actor and social media celebrity, was seated courtside in the player's box. He had flown in especially for this game, sharing stories on Instagram with phrases like, "I'm so proud of you, baby, and I'm watching greatness happen live." His presence was not out of the ordinary. Players frequently have partners, family, and friends by their sides. It is a component of both the support system and the game. However, no one anticipated how much attention he would receive, not from the audience or the pundits, but from Sabalenka herself. The game began as planned. In the second game, Sabalenka broke Eala's serve. Her strength was astonishing. Eala retaliated with skill, drop shots, and deft angles, the kind of tennis that makes spectators adore underdogs. Sabalenka won the first set 6-3, but Eala had gained respect, which is more valuable. She had the support of the crowd. There was thunderous cheering for each point she won. Mateo, too? Every single one of them had him on his feet, applauding, yelling, filming on his phone, and living each moment as if it were a scene from a movie. His bright yellow jersey with Eala's initials stitched on the chest made him impossible to overlook as he sat in the front row. He was repeatedly captured by the television cameras, which focused on his responses, his enthusiasm, and his unadulterated happiness. The glances began at that point. During a changeover, Sabalenka turned to face Eala's box and gave it a long, serious look as she made her way back to her bench. Her body language spoke everything, even though her countenance was unreadable. For a brief moment, the mask of power crumbled as she tipped her head slightly and stiffened her jaw.
She was troubled by something.
It was also noted by commentators. Sabalenka could be wondering who the person in yellow was grabbing all the camera time, one of them quipped on television. The other dismissed it with a joke. But viewers at home? They noticed something different. Tension was evident to them. They witnessed the start of something that would blow up in unexpected ways. And the atmosphere on that court changed as the second set got underway. This was going to grow into something far more than just tennis. What happens when a champion loses concentration and their feelings take control of the scoreboard? The solution was going to be revealed in real time. Eala served to begin the second set. The audience could sense that she had found her rhythm. She confidently held serve while varying her shots to keep Sabalenka guessing. For a little time, it seemed as though this could succeed, as if the underdog could indeed accomplish the seemingly impossible. However, Sabalenka was shaken by something else totally rather than the tennis. Mateo got back up during the third game, while Eala was getting ready to serve. This time, instead of merely clapping, he yelled loudly enough for the courtside microphones to pick it up. The sentiment was universal, even if he spoke in Tagalog. Pure affection, pure encouragement. In a matter of seconds, the broadcast replayed the scene as the camera swung toward him. Instantly, social media lighted up. Sabalenka turned to face Mateo as videos of him cheering began to circulate on Twitter with comments like, "Boyfriend of the year," and "This is what support looks like." This time, There was a complete, prolonged stare instead of just a quick glimpse. She was bouncing the ball at the baseline, getting ready to return serve, but her gaze was fixed on Matteo rather than Eala. It was wonderfully captured by the camera. Her expression was something other than irritation or rage, something that people would attempt to decipher for the next 48 hours. Was it envy? Distraction? Disgust? Everyone had an opinion, but no one knew for sure. Eala observed as well. You could see it in the way her shoulders tensed, and the way she looked confusedly at her box before turning back to Sabalenka. She could sense the change, but she didn't know what it was. The mood. Uncomfortable. Sabalenka delivered an unreturnable rocket down the tee. Without acknowledging the point or rejoicing, she made her way back to the baseline. Even while her face was expressionless, her gaze kept returning to Matteo and the box. And each time they did, the tension increased. Social media was in complete disarray by the time of the switchover. Every shot was being examined by lip readers, body language specialists were being cited in real-time tweets, and fan pages were comparing Sabalenka's responses side by side. Some supported her, claiming that athletes become passionate and that she was simply locked in. Others claimed that she had no right to look down someone who wasn't even participating and that it was unprofessional. However, the moment that would truly define everything was still to come. Sabalenka moved slightly toward the chair umpire as she sat down on her bench with a towel over her head, and then she whispered something that was barely audible on the broadcast stream. The entire remark was only partially captured by the microphones, but it was enough to send the internet into a frenzy. Very important. Courtside. Diversion. Everyone only heard that, but it was sufficient. The conjecture erupted. Was Matteo the subject of her complaints? Was she requesting his removal? Was she saying that he was a distraction? The harm had already been done, despite the pundits' best efforts to move on. In a matter of minutes, the video went viral. It was shared on TikTok accounts with dramatic music overlays. Every possible interpretation was examined in Twitter discussions. It became memes thanks to Instagram fan pages. You could see that Alex Eala was still playing and fighting. Now in her eyes, it was no longer simply about tennis. This could turn personal, and whatever transpired next would either make her a fighter or shatter her. Nobody was prepared for what was about to happen, and the entire world was watching. Who controls the story when the court turns into a stage and the game into a spectacle? Real-time writing of the response was about to begin. The second set's third game. At 1-1, Eala was serving. The crowd was electrified after she had just fended off 2 break points. Matteo was up every time she scored a point. He yelled her name whenever she made a spectacular shot. He wasn't attempting to divert attention. He was simply being there, encouraging, and being the ideal companion. But that was too much for Sabalenka. Sabalenka passed the umpire's chair as they switched sides for the subsequent game. This time, the mics recorded everything as she slowed down and looked up. Would you kindly ask him to take a seat? This isn't a carnival. This is a professional match. Like a grenade, the words lingered in the air. Taken aback, the umpire bowed a little, but did not answer right away. With a grim expression and a set jaw, Sabalenka made her way to her bench. She was determined to get things done, and she wasn't going to back down. After hearing it, the producers and broadcast team decided to cut away in a matter of seconds. However, it was too late. 12 viewers of the live stream had already captured the video on their screens. It appeared on Twitter in 5 minutes. It received 500,000 views in 10. In 20, it became a worldwide fad. The comment section turned into a battleground. He is acting disrespectfully, and she is correct. Are you serious? Allow the man to stand by his girlfriend. Sabalenka is simply upset that she is being distracted. When you are unable to cope with pressure, this is what occurs. Matteo did nothing improper. This is just jealousy. She is a victor. She is perfectly entitled to insist on attention. The world of tennis was divided. Even non-tennis fans became experts on courtside etiquette after former players offered their opinions and analysts discussed it on live broadcasts. And the match went on despite everything. But barely. Eala's strategy failed. It was visible to you in real time. Her ground strokes were less effective. She double faulted twice in a single game, and her serves began to go missing. The scoreboard was truthful. After breaking her serve, Sabalenka broke it once more. The outcome of the second set was 6-1. It had nothing to do with skill. The match was slipping away. Everything else was to blame. The attention, the pressure, and the inappropriate twice in a single game, and her serves began to go missing. The scoreboard was truthful. After breaking her serve, Sabalenka broke it once more. The outcome of the second set was 6-1. It had nothing to do with skill. The match was slipping away. Everything else was to blame. The attention, the pressure, and the inappropriate words. Eala didn't check her box when she sat down after losing the second set. She avoided looking at Matteo. With tears welling up in her eyes, she simply gazed at the floor. The world saw a young woman struggling to maintain her composure in the face of overwhelming odds as the camera panned in. This was not intended to occur. This was meant to be her fairy tale run, her turning point. However, it had become a nightmare instead. Matteo took a seat after noticing the change. He stopped applauding and stopped moving, just watching helplessly as the woman he loved engaged in a fight that she was unable to win, not because she was inadequate, but rather because the game had evolved beyond tennis. What about Sabalenka? She was acting cold, efficient, and mechanical. She wasn't grinning or celebrating. Silence and control were what she had desired. But at what price? Once impartial, the crowd had changed. The clapping began to give way to boos. People felt uneasy. Everyone could tell that this didn't feel right. The story had completely changed by the time the third set began. Who would win wasn't the point of this. It had to do with what was gone. Sportsmanship, respect, and the unseen boundary between cruelty and competition. The internet was already scripting the conclusion, not the one that took place on the court, but the one that would permanently define both of their legacies, as Sabalenka served to start the final set. When does competitiveness turn into something more sinister? When does a hero turn into a villain? No one could turn away as the solution was being revealed in real time. In 87 minutes, the game was over. Sabalenka prevailed 6-3, 6-1, and 6-2. At the net, she gave Eala a quick, chilly handshake. Just protocol, no words, no eye contact. Without doing a post-match interview, she packed her luggage, waved to the spectators, and left the court.
That was out of the ordinary.
Interviews are not skipped by champions. However, Sabalenka was aware. She was aware of what awaited her. The blowback, the questions, the tempest that had been building since the second set. She was correct, too. Within an hour, the official Australian Open social media accounts were inundated with videos of the gaze, the comment, and the moment everything changed, not with highlights of Sabalenka's dominance or compliments on her technical prowess. The fire was fueled by the algorithm. Every second of the interaction was examined in TikTok videos that have received millions of views. Whether Sabalenka had gone too far was discussed in Twitter threads with tens of thousands of retweets. A tennis fan account with more than 200,000 followers shared a video that went viral. It was a split-screen edit, with Eala's face fighting back tears during the transition on one side and Sabalenka's icy gaze on Matteo on the other. "This is what happens when ego kills the spirit of the game," the caption said. It received a 12 hours and 3 million views. Professional athletes began to comment. Sabalenka was defended by some. "Players have the right to demand professionalism and focus," a former Wimbledon winner said. "Courtside conduct is important." Others, however, fiercely resist. "I've had families scream their lungs out for me courtside," a recently retired American celebrity wrote.
Tennis is that.
That's what love is. Distraction was not the issue here.
Control was at issue here.
Tennis was no longer the exclusive topic of discussion. It turned into a debate about privilege and respect, whether champions have more rights than budding stars, power dynamics, and telling women to smile and be quiet. Every viewpoint was examined, and every viewpoint was turned into a weapon. Matteo then said something. He shared a single Instagram story with no caption, just a picture of Alex Eala in the middle of a swing with furious eyes and unwavering resolve. It was an obvious message. He wasn't supporting the gown. He was not expressing regret. There was nothing wrong with his being there to support the lady he loved. Millions of people saw the post, and comments poured in. While some applauded him for maintaining his position, others advised him to keep out of it because he had exacerbated the situation. Matteo versus Sabalenka became a popular topic, memes were made, and fan pages made him a symbol. It was ridiculous, draining, and totally uncontrollable. Eala, however, said nothing. She didn't tweet, publish, or make a remark. Her silence further heightened the rumors, despite her team's assurances that she needed time to think things through and would speak when she was ready. Was Sabalenka the source of her anger? Did Matteo's prominence make her feel ashamed? Was she devastated that someone had stolen her moment? Major publications published headlines like the courtside controversy that broke tennis, when champions become bullies, and the Sabalenka problem as sports journalists began penning think pieces. Whether the WTA required more stringent regulations regarding courtside conduct was discussed in opinion pieces. The incident was covered in whole episodes of podcasts. Everybody spoke up. Everybody had a side. Throughout it all, a single question kept coming up in every tweet, video reply, and comment section. When Sabalenka did speak, what would she say? Would she say she was sorry? Would she put in more effort? Would she say that someone had misinterpreted her? The world was waiting, and the clamor grew louder the longer she remained mute. Because silence is no longer neutral in the era of social media. Rather, it is a statement, and hers was overwhelming. Who gets to write the narrative in a world where every second is captured on camera, every word is examined, and every response becomes content? The struggle for the story had only just begun. Sabalenka finally spoke up 48 hours after the game. Through a well-written Instagram post, rather than a press conference or an official statement. She was shown alone on the court, clenching her fist in the middle of the celebration. The caption was succinct, well-written, and yet communicated everything and nothing. It's a mental game, tennis. Respect the battle and the court. Next up is the next round. That was all. There was only a hazy gesture to professionalism cloaked in inspirational language, no apology, no recognition of the situation, and no mention of Eala or Matteo. The comment section erupted right away. Her supporters commended her for persevering. It was dubbed a non-apology by critics. Some claimed that by not participating, she was being elegant, while others claimed that by not taking responsibility for her comments, she was being cowardly. Her sponsors said nothing. A boring remark about concentrating on the tournament was released by her coach. The WTA refrained from commenting, stating that it was an issue of on-court behavior that did not breach any official regulations. In a technical sense, Sabalenka had done nothing improper. She had asked the umpire to do something. She hadn't made a scene or yelled. However, details don't matter to the court of public opinion, and the decision was already made. Eala eventually spoke in the interim. She shared a video of herself sitting in her hotel room, appearing worn out but calm, on Instagram without any makeup or script. Every word she said throughout her 2 minutes of speech was important. I traveled to Melbourne to play tennis, compete at the top level, and represent my nation. I didn't come here to be silenced, nor did I come here for drama or to be a part of a viral moment. I had the support of my partner. People who love you do that. When the world doesn't believe in you, they turn up, cheer you on, and have faith in you. If it serves as a diversion, perhaps he is not the issue. Perhaps it has to do with how we perceive public affection and support for women. He wasn't the reason I lost the match. Because I allowed the cacophony to affect me, I lost. And I promise not to repeat that error. In the first day, the video received more than 6 million views. The response was overwhelming after it was aired on morning talk shows, shared by prominent sports outlets, and referenced in publications. The story changed. A contentious issue turned into a rallying cry. Eala was no longer merely a tennis player. She was a voice, a representation of tenacity, and a refusal to be minimized. Matteo shared her video again with a straightforward message, "Proud of you always." The tennis community became even more divided. A few players openly backed Eala. "Let's normalize being loved loudly," tweeted one of the top 10 WTA players. "Let's normalize unshamed support." Others said nothing since they didn't want to get involved in the issue. Some intensified their support for Sabalenka, claiming that players have the right to manage their surroundings and that mental concentration is crucial in professional sports. Companies began to take notice. The Num had established herself as one of the best hardcore players of her generation by destroying every opponent in her path and dropping just one set during the competition. The award ceremony went perfectly.
She spoke politely.
She expressed gratitude to the tournament organizers, her team, and her supporters. For the cameras, she grinned. She raised the trophy. However, something was lacking. The energy of the crowd was different. The applause was kind rather than enthusiastic. Reactions on social media were subdued. Her supremacy was less prominent in the news than the controversy she had never adequately addressed. The memory of that moment persisted even after victory. The look, the remark, the clash of egos on a court where tennis was meant to be played. In contrast, Eala had left Wimbledon without any awards, but she did take something with her. A voice, a platform, and an engaging narrative. In interviews, she discussed the demands of being a rising celebrity, the discrimination against women, and what it means to be vocally supported in a society that frequently wants women to shrink. She transcended her role as a player. She turned into a movement. Matteo, too? He remained by her side, albeit more subdued and cautious. Even though he was aware of the price of publicity, he had no regrets because true love doesn't look well on camera. It simply appears. And sometimes that's sufficient. As is typically the case, the tennis world moved on. New competitions, rivalries, and drama. However, people remembered. The thought bits continued to arrive. Months later, the incident was replayed on podcasts. It was used as a case study about the mental game and outside influences in sports psychology classes. It became a point of reference in discussions on the duties of champions, courtside manners, and fan behavior. Beyond all the analysis and controversial opinions, however, a more profound truth about contemporary Australian Open championships. Expressed gratitude to the tournament organizers, her team, and her supporters. For the cameras, she grinned. She raised the trophy. However, something was lacking. The energy of the crowd was different. The applause was kind rather than enthusiastic. Reactions on social media were subdued. Her supremacy was less prominent in the news than the controversy she had never adequately addressed. The memory of that moment persisted even after victory. The look, the remark, the clash of egos on a court where tennis was meant to be played. In contrast, Eala had left Wimbledon without any awards, but she did take something with her. A voice, a platform, and an engaging narrative. In interviews, she discussed the demands of being a rising celebrity, the discrimination against women, and what it means to be vocally supported in a society that frequently wants women to shrink. She transcended her role as a player. She turned into a movement. Matteo, too? He remained by her side, albeit more subdued and cautious. Even though he was aware of the price of publicity, he had no regrets because true love doesn't look well on camera. It simply appears. And sometimes that's sufficient. As is typically the case, the tennis world moved on. New competitions, rivalries, and drama. However, people remembered. The thought bits continued to arrive. Months later, the incident was replayed on podcasts. It was used as a case study about the mental game and outside influences in sports psychology classes. It became a point of reference in discussions on the duties of champions, courtside manners, and fan behavior. Beyond all the analysis and controversial opinions, however, a more profound truth about contemporary sports had emerged that no one was willing to publicly acknowledge. That we now watch more than just the game. We keep an eye out for the friction, the emotion, and the times when people break under the pressure of expectations. We eat up the drama, even though we say we want sportsmanship. Although we click on the dispute, we claim to value respect. What about the players? They are in the middle. They're supposed to be strong players on the court and role models off it, and they're supposed to be vulnerable but not overly so. Competitive but not aloof, powerful but not threatening. Despite the fact that perfection is unachievable, they are expected to be flawless. We also find it difficult to forgive them when they make mistakes and display their humanity in ways that bother us. Sabalenka will always be seen as a victor. A competitor who never gave up, a serve capable of breaking sound barriers, and 3 Australian Open championships. However, she will also be remembered for that particular moment, the look, the words, and the way she made a young player feel insignificant on the biggest platform of her life. Whether it's fair or not, legacy is more than your accomplishments. It's about how you succeed and who you harm in the process. Not only will Eala be remembered as the defeated underdog, but she will also be known as the woman who spoke up for her right to support, refused to keep quiet, and used her suffering as a springboard for change. Even though her career is just getting started, she has already gained respect, which is far more valuable than any Grand Slam. Because tennis is ultimately just a game. But what endures is how we treat one another, how we support those we care about, and how we manage authority when we have it. People remember that. This is the question that remains, the one that no one can definitively answer, and the one that will sustain this narrative long after the viral videos have faded. Was Sabalenka wrong to insist on concentration, or was she just acting as champions do, managing her surroundings, removing distractions, and defending her mental space? And why does it still seem like something was lost that day, if she was correct to speak up? When someone else's dignity is compromised, why does victory seem meaningless? Perhaps there isn't a correct response. Perhaps that's the idea. Perhaps it's not a black and white game. Perhaps it's all shades of gray, played out under bright lights, analyzed by millions, and never really comprehended by anyone who wasn't standing on that court, experiencing the gravity of the situation, and having to make difficult decisions in real time. This is what we do know.
Tennis will go on.
Cameras will record every look, every word, and every emotion as champions rise and fall and underdogs battle. We'll continue to observe, discuss, and take sides. We're actually playing that game. Not the one on the court, but the one in the comments, the one in our hearts, where we determine our values, the people we stand up for, and the kind of world we wish to create. One moment at a time courtside. This was more than just a tennis match. It was a mirror held up to all of us, a reminder that human beings with egos, emotions, and everything in between play sports, that champions aren't always heroes, that underdogs aren't always innocent, and that sometimes the most significant battles aren't about winning, but rather about how we choose to fight. For years to come, people will tell the tale of Sabalenka, Eala, and that viral moment. Every time a comparable circumstance arises, it will be examined, discussed, and cited. Because these are important moments. They influence the sports culture. They have an impact on how the upcoming generation of players competes, acts, and shows up. Ultimately, the question you have to answer for yourself is the only one that really counts. How do you use your power when you have it? And how do you get it back when you don't?